This story is titled, My Girlfriend Refuses to Delete Old Pictures of Her and Her Ex Cuddling and Says I'm Being Insecure. I never thought a handful of old pictures could make me question everything. My name is Tom, and I'm 47 years old. I live in North Carolina, and for the past 2 years, I've been in what I thought was a happy, committed relationship with my girlfriend, Sarah. We met through mutual friends, hit it off instantly, and built something that felt real. Solid. I believed we were on the same page about what we wanted: loyalty, trust, and a future together. But then, one night, I found something that changed everything. It happened by accident. We were sitting on the couch, her scrolling through her phone while I absentmindedly watched TV. I glanced over at her screen just as she swiped past a picture, one that made my stomach twist. It was Sarah and another man, curled up on a couch, smiling at the camera like they belonged to each other. His arm was around her, her head resting on his chest. It was intimate, comfortable, too comfortable. I felt my heart rate pick up. "Who's that?" She barely glanced at me. "Oh, that's just an old picture of me and Jason." Jason. I recognized the name. Her ex, the one she had been with for years before they broke up. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why do you still have pictures like that?" She gave a small shrug. "Because they're memories." I stared at her, waiting for her to say more. To reassure me, to tell me that the pictures didn't mean anything, but she just kept scrolling, as if my question wasn't worth acknowledging. The uneasy feeling in my chest grew. "Sarah," I said carefully, "that's not just any picture, that's you two cuddling." She sighed, finally putting her phone down. "Tom, come on, it's in the past. It's not like I'm thinking about him when I look at them." I clenched my jaw. "Then why keep them?" Her expression hardened slightly. "Because they're part of my life. I don't erase my past just because I'm with someone new." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to be the kind of person who didn't let something so small bother him. But the image was burned into my mind. And it wasn't just that one photo, because now my mind was racing, wondering how many more were hidden away in her phone, on her computer, in old albums. And if she wasn't willing to let go of those memories, what else was she still holding on to? That night I barely slept. The next morning I decided to bring it up again, hoping that maybe with time she'd see where I was coming from. We were eating breakfast when I set my coffee down and said, "I need to be honest with you. The pictures of you and Jason bother me." She looked up from her plate, frowning. "Tom, we've been over this." "I know," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But it's not just about the pictures. It's about what they represent. You're holding on to something from your past, something that makes me feel like I'm competing with a ghost." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't about him. It's about me and my memories." I leaned forward. "But we're building something new, a new future. Doesn't that matter more than old pictures with an ex?" Her jaw tightened. "I'm not deleting them just to make you feel better." A sharp pain twisted in my chest. "Sarah, I'm not asking you to erase your past. I'm asking you to prioritize our relationship over a man who isn't even in your life anymore." She pushed her plate away, shaking her head. "This is ridiculous. You're being insecure." The word hit me like a slap. I sat back, stunned. "Insecure?" "Yes, Tom," she said, exasperated. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. Just because I have a few pictures doesn't mean I still have feelings for him." I felt the words catch in my throat. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being insecure. But something inside me, the same voice that had been nagging at me since I first saw the picture, told me that this was more than just an old memory. This was a piece of her heart she wasn't willing to let go of. And that realization terrified me. The conversation ended there, but the tension between us lingered. For the next few days, things were different. I tried to brush it off, to act like it didn't matter, but every time she picked up her phone, I wondered if she was looking at him. Every time she smiled at a memory, I wondered if it was his face she saw in her mind. And one evening, something happened that shattered any hope I had left. Sarah was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wouldn't have looked. I never wanted to be that guy. But something, instinct, curiosity, maybe even fear, made me glance at the screen. It was a notification, a cloud backup reminder, and right there in the preview was another picture. A picture of her and Jason. Not an old one. A newer one. Dated just 2 weeks before we got together. My hands went cold, my stomach dropped. This wasn't just a past memory, this was something fresh, something she hadn't told me about. I felt the room tilt around me as realization sank in. She hadn't just been holding on to memories, she had been holding on to him. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure I was the only man in her heart. I sat there, staring at her phone, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That date, that picture. It wasn't from years ago. It was recent. 2 weeks before we got together. My mind raced. Had she lied to me? Had she still been with Jason while we were starting? Was I just a rebound? I barely had time to process before I heard the water shut off in the bathroom. My body moved on its own. I set her phone back on the nightstand, stood up, and walked to the kitchen, my hands shaking. A few minutes later, Sarah walked in, toweling her hair dry. "Hey," she said, flashing me a small smile. "What's up?" I turned to face her, forcing myself to stay calm. "I saw something, Sarah." Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" I swallowed, then took a breath. "Your phone buzzed while you were in the shower. It was a backup notification. I saw a preview of a picture, you and Jason, dated just 2 weeks before we got together." Her entire body stiffened. I watched as she quickly schooled her expression, but I had already seen it, the flicker of panic in her eyes. "Tom," she started, her voice careful, "you went through my phone?" I shook my head. "I didn't go through anything. It popped up on the screen." She crossed her arms. "That doesn't mean you can jump to conclusions." I felt anger simmer beneath my skin. "Then tell me, why do you have a picture with him from just before we started dating?" She exhaled sharply, dropping the towel onto the counter. "Because we were still friends back then." I frowned. "Friends?" "Yes." She ran a hand through her damp hair. "Jason and I ended things, but we still talked for a little while afterward. It wasn't a big deal." I studied her. "So you were in contact with him while you and I were starting?" She hesitated, just for a second, but that second was enough. I let out a humorless laugh. "Wow. Tom, it didn't mean anything," she said quickly. "We weren't together at that point. I was just adjusting to the change." "Adjusting?" I repeated, my voice tight. "Sarah, you told me you were done with him before we started dating. You never mentioned that you were still talking, still taking pictures together." She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Because I knew you'd react like this." I stared at her, a bitter taste in my mouth. "You mean, like someone who deserves honesty?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I didn't lie to you." I exhaled, shaking my head. "Keeping something from me is lying, Sarah." Silence hung between us, and suddenly I realized something. It wasn't just about the pictures anymore. It wasn't even just about Jason. It was about trust. Or in this case, the lack of it. I had spent months telling myself I was overreacting, that I was being insecure, that these pictures were nothing more than old memories. But now, standing in front of her, watching her struggle to justify why she had been hiding things from me, I knew. I knew that deep down, she had never fully let go of him. And maybe she never would. I took a step back. "I can't do this, Sarah," she frowned. "What?" "This." I gestured between us, my voice thick with emotion. "I can't be with someone who makes me feel like I'm second place in their own relationship." Her eyes widened. "Tom, don't do this." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I deserve to be with someone who makes me feel like I'm their first choice." Her face crumpled. "You are my first choice." I let out a shaky breath. "Then why does it feel like I've been competing with your past this whole time?" She didn't have an answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I turned toward the door, grabbing my coat. My heart felt heavy, my chest tight, but I knew this was the right decision. Because love shouldn't feel like a battle, you have to keep fighting just to be enough. And for the first time in months, I wasn't going to fight for a place in someone's past. I was going to walk toward a future where I was finally enough. If this story resonated with you, like, comment, and subscribe. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Let's talk about it in the comments below.